Um, Good morning, everyone. My name is Ahmet İşduygu. I'd like to welcome you all to our seminar series, Migratory and broader seminar series. Over the last couple of years, we are organizing these seminar series as the Wednesday seminars. I'm very happy to introduce the Murat Güvenç of Kadir Has University today. I'd like to express my thanks to him. This will be our first talk in this semester. Very briefly, as I said, that we are organizing this seminar series under the broader project, and broader is a kind of project we Koç University and the Pompeu Fabra University from Barcelona and Amsterdam University are collaborating together. At the center of the whole project is the question of how we can link the migration studies to the urban studies. In fact, this title also will be the title of the talk today. Just before giving the floors to Professor Murat Güvenç, very briefly, I'd like to introduce him. He's the graduate of his PhD from the Urban and Regional Planning Department of the Middle East Technical University. He was there for a long time. Then we know that he was also the president of the Foundation of Turkey from 2017 to 2010. Also, he was the vice president of the Social and Economic Research Foundation of Turkey. His abbreviation is the TESA. He's a great scholar, actually, in urban studies. His projects often focus on the urban regional history, construction of the metropolitan social data. Actually, he works with the big data sets. This is very unique, and he constructs a type of archive on these issues. As I said, I'm very happy to have him here as the first speaker of our seminar series. Yes, Professor Güvenç, the floor is yours. Okay.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for this kind introduction. Ahmet İşduygu, Professor Ahmet İşduygu asked me to talk about the relationship between the urban studies and migration. Okay, so I prepared a presentation that will comprise two parts. Okay, so I will try to make a brief historical introduction of pertaining to the development of these two related but relatively autonomous disciplines. So up to very recent times, okay, up to very recent time. And here I may point out in parentheses the contribution by late Bruno Latour, who had a wonderful title for his one of the last books of his, Reassembling the Social, how we can reassemble, generate a big synthesis of scholarships dealing with the social. Social is studied in different economic aspects are studied by economicians, with sociological aspects by, okay, so psychologists study social phenomena, social group, small group phenomena at other scales. So what he proposes is to come up with a resynthesis of the social scholarships. Okay, so the problem that has been presented to me by talking about what is the relationship between migration scholarship and the urban studies scholarship. So this is, I think, a topic that is very well at the very heart of the contemporary issues, and I will, of course, this is at the very heart, but there is a lot of problems to solve. So we are at the very, very beginning of a long quest. So the 20th century specialisms, okay, are going to disappear in the 21st century, and we are going to have, as we have hybrid cars gasoline, we are going to have hybrid disciplines. And at the very end of these huge research projects, I think the autonomy of these disciplines will disappear. And the boundaries defining these disciplines will become more and more porous, geçirgen. And we are going to have a new social science. So this is a very beginning. Okay, so it's very, very hard to provide an overview on the history of these two scholarships. We have very profound scholarships in urban studies, a huge scholarship on migration studies, and I think these are autonomous fields, but the intersection of these is pretty much vacant. Okay, so that's what the project is trying to do. So I will try to come up with few operationalized concepts that hopefully will help you understand how we can mix these two related but autonomous fields. Okay, so let me first start by saying that at the beginning, okay, the whole story begins with industrialization. Okay, we had urban studies prior to the industrial period. We have migratory studies, even in the Middle Ages or in antiquity. We have huge migration, but migration scholarship, as we know it, okay, owes its foundation to very big transformation that have started after industrialization. And here I may perhaps not be wrong if I cite the name of Ravenstein's migration laws. Okay, so you may think whatever you want about these laws, but this is the first beginning of the scholarship, how we can think about the relationship of the migration flows. And I find them very, very, I think, brilliant as far as if you consider the technology of the time and the tedious work of analyzing all these interaction matrices and to come up to these 10 conclusions. And this is very, very precious. Then we have on the urban studies field, I think most of the scholars agree that the field of urban studies, as we know it now, the modern urban studies, started with Engels's work on the condition of working classes in Britain. He has a book in which he describes the social geography and structure and class structure, social stratification in the city of Manchester. So it can be taken up as a predecessor of the Chicago school that will come up perhaps 50 years later. So this is the base. So we have on the one hand scholarship on in the migration field. On the other hand, we have scholarship that in the urban studies part. So very interestingly, he analyzes the city of Manchester, and it is not by accident that Manchester is chosen as the paradigmatic example of industrial city, just because. And if you read, for instance, Edward Stojar's book on post-metropolis, he takes the city of Manchester as his ultimate example of industrial city. Why? Because Manchester do not have any history prior to the industrial period. So if the city of Manchester exists, it is entirely due to the process of industrialization. Okay, industrial. And what you see in Manchester, what you observe in Manchester is a paradigmatic example of what will come out in the industrial cities. And as I say, there is no history in Manchester. There is no church, no institutions for social help, no municipality. So everything had to be invented or reinvented in the city of Manchester. So if you read, for instance, Raymond Williams, I don't have time to develop it, but for instance, the creation of the discipline of statistics, social statistics, started in Manchester because they had in front of their eyes a city developing. Okay, people were coming throughout the landscape. They did not have any kinship ties, no religious institutions to organize the social solidarity. And of course, they did not have any data to represent this formation. So if Raymond Williams says that they have tried to solve this issue by analyzing at that time a craft or an art that is called gambler's algebra. Gambler's algebra is the grandfather of what we know as statistics. They have created a society, civil society organization in Manchester, Manchester Statistical Society, which has been produced marvels in describing this social formation. Then the example was imitated in London, and London created London Statistical Society, and these two statistical societies got the backing of the Queen, and they are nominated Royal Statistical Society. And after the creation of this Royal Statistical Society, universities like Cambridge, Oxford started to have courses on statistics, which did not exist prior to that. So, just like these two processes, therefore, took shape in Britain and developed parallelly. Okay, so how can we come up with a story of this parallel developments without providing or producing a story that is too rich in facts or descriptions and too poor in insights? Okay, so this is a big issue. Okay, I don't have time to develop the development of these two disciplines, but I think we have two operationalized concepts, two concepts that can be easily operationalized, and these are the concepts of demographic transition and urban transition. We have two concepts, and the development of these two disciplines can be analyzed by referring to these two concepts. What we mean by demographic transition, prior to the Industrial Revolution, okay, I am skipping over the details, but we have a predominantly agricultural society. And in the agricultural societies, what we have in demography, three distinct characteristics. First, agricultural societies do have very high rates of fertility. Secondly, they have very high rates of mortality, and they have comparatively low rates of mobility. Okay, so migration is low, high levels of fertility, high rates of mortality, because the health services are not developed well. The microbes and the microbiology do not exist. There is a huge amount of infant mortality. Okay, etc., etc. And the level of mobility is comparatively low. Okay, so what happens with the industrialization is that we see a process in the demographic process. As the country gets industrialized, what is happening? We have a very swift decrease in mortality. Thanks to the development and technologies of hygiene, the cities and industrial places develop tools to reduce the rate of mortality. The urban living conditions, okay, generate a context in which households or the workers' families realize very well that the households are successful if they control the number of children. Okay, so the number of children, which is a production asset in the agricultural field, becomes a burden in urban fields. So you have a reduction in the field of fertility. Fertility rates decline and the mortality rates decline. Okay, and we have an increase in migration, but I am not going to talk about migration now. Okay, now, but of course, these changes, this demographic transition I'm talking about, do not take place overnight. It takes time. Okay, and at the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the cities in Britain are called death traps. Death traps, because the children born in the industrial cities, the cities are so poor and so dirty, so unhealthy, that very few of the newly born, okay, live up to 1 year of age, where they accumulate the natural immunity. Okay, so the infant mortality is very, very high. Okay, and in that context, the cities had to invest in infrastructure. And what happens in this level of high infant mortality? Rich families in industrial Britain, Spain, in France also, send their children, okay, newly born children, to wet nurses. Wet nursing, the wet nursing is that. So the wet nurses are families in the countryside that raise the children in the countryside. They have enough money to rent a wet nurse to raise the newborn. And when the newly born reaches 1 or 1.5 years of age, then it is brought back because the natural immunity level is gained. Okay, I told that this transition is not overnight. What is happening in this transition is that gradually the infant mortality rates decrease, the mortality rates decrease, and the households do make a lower number of children. So So you have a fewer number in the lower age groups, youngsters are. The elderly people are dying, and it needs to time, but the number of elderly is low, but the number of active population is very, very high. So, and that at the very end of the demographic transition, what happens? We have what? A perfectly cylindric age pyramid, in which you have, this is called a stable population. The birth rates and mortality rates are low, and the population is replacing itself. The population do not increase, but it replaces itself. Do you see this? But this shape, okay, this shape is extremely important for linking the demographic transition to cities. Why? I have no time to develop this issue, but I suggest that you read an opus magnum written by late Frederick Shorter called Population of Turkey. Have you ever seen it? Okay. So in the Population of Turkey, he explains this one. And this period, this shape is called the window of opportunity, or the window of economic opportunity. So this is the phase in which societies economically can get very high rates of growth. And a group of scholars, I was included in this group, we have written a report for TÜSİAD, Turkey's opportunity window, Türkiye'nin fırsat penceresi, where we deal with this issue. Okay? And this issue, I think that it is very, very important for understanding what is happening when the demographic transition takes place, what is happening in cities. Okay? So what are the advantages, okay, of this window of opportunity? The window of opportunity is very, very, very important because it explains the economic miracles of countries like, say, Brazil, Philippines, Korea. Okay, so we talk about incredibly high economic growth rates, and China too has phase one. Okay, this window of opportunity. Why we are calling this window of opportunity? Because this is a period that lasts 30, 40 years, but gradually the window closes. And you have a transition to this type of demographic profile. What is the advantage of this one? Is that in this form, when the society gets to this form of demographic structure, you have very few numbers of kids, okay, and very few numbers of elderly. So the dependency ratio, what we call the dependency ratio, is very, very low. If we are doing in this triangular shape thing, what you have, you have one adult for approximately 2 kids. One adult has to take care of 2 kids. But in this case, okay, 2 adults take care of 1 kid. So the children have better education. The societies the kids do have better chances for being re-educated. Okay, and the number of the elderly is low. Therefore, the demand for social expenditure is low. Thirdly, what we have a surplus of labor, active population. And this is what Marx called, for instance, a large industrial reserve army. you have a higher number of job seekers as compared to the jobs available. Okay, so when the number of jobs available is lower than the number of job seekers, it means that you have a surplus of labor, and that puts an automatic downward pressure on wages. Okay, so you don't have to fight the working classes, because the working classes are ready to work even for lower wages. Okay, when they are ready to work for lower wages, it means that they can, the society gets a competitive edge for economic competition. You have lower wages, and you can produce, your produce therefore will be cheaper as compared to the competitors that are in this ages. So you can outdo all of your competitors. This is why it is called the window of opportunity of countries. So this shape, I think, is the key for understanding the relationship between migration studies and urban studies. Because how we can here, the transition from this type of society to this type of society, okay, is not automatical. It involves migration, okay? But we all know that migration is a sex and age selective process, okay? The elderly, very elderly, do not migrate. The very youngsters do not migrate. Only those in the active age groups migrate. Okay, so by moving to the cities, okay, they increase the shape of the onion here. Okay, and if we rethink what is happening in the rural areas, the rural areas are losing their migrant population. Therefore, they have fewer people capable of assume production, and they have an all elderly. So they become gradually uninteresting for the capital. Because if the demand of labor increases in rural areas, the day after, what you are going to see, an increase in wages, because you don't have a surplus of labor in rural areas. So this process starts a hidden process in which the rural areas lose their, let's say, economic competitive power, and they become beautiful landscapes with practically no economic production at all, apart animal husbandry and agriculture, okay? And perhaps few trades related to agriculture, okay? Cottage making, repairing carts, but these are expected. The industry do not. So this process explains how the industrialization produces overgrown cities and empties the rural countryside. Okay, let me give you an example from Turkey. Okay, the population of Istanbul, and this is a puzzle, and I will ask you to think about this. In 1950s, the population of Istanbul was about 1 million. Okay, 1 million. In 1907, the population of Istanbul was about 1.2 million. So Istanbul in 1950s had a lower population as compared to its 1907, population figures. The population of Istanbul is down to 700,000 in 1927. So the declaration of republic in Turkey is a coup de grace, is a blow on the economy of Istanbul. Istanbul loses practically everything after the declaration of Ankara as the capital city. The core diplomatic quits the city, okay? The ministries are moved to Ankara. The foreigners empty the city, and the city loses its population. Its population is down to 700. It is up, reaches the 1 million 25 years later. So, and during this period, Turkey is exactly an agricultural society, characterized by very, very high infant mortality and mortality rates. The child mortality, infant mortality is estimated to be about 300 per 1,000 kids, okay? That's the reason why we have in Turkish so many names like Durdu, Dursun, Yaşar, okay? So these are the wishes of their parents because all the kids are dying, okay? 300, so 1/3 kids are dying. And the mortality rates are high as well. In Istanbul, we had several preventoriums because we have the illnesses, okay, killing, okay, verem hastalığı, okay, killing. And but you have a population of 1 million in Istanbul. Now, the puzzle starts here. In 1950s, okay, the total fertility rate in Turkey was about 6. What does that mean? Is that women in childbearing ages experience at least 6 births. So between years of 14 to 44, okay, in the 30 years. And on the average, women experience 6 live births in Turkey, okay? Now the figure is down to 1.6, okay? Below the replacement level. There is also a considerable decrease in the mortality rates because of the vaccination, health measures, and everything. So from this 400, so we are now down to 10 or 12 per 1,000, okay, infant mortality rates. Okay, so very, very low comparable. And if you compare, for instance, women with higher education degrees, the infant mortality is in the order of Sweden, okay? But of course, you do have socioeconomic differences. But what happens? The population of Istanbul, which was 1 million, okay, in 1950s, shows 17-fold increase in the context of 75 years. So we have now 2023, okay, 2023, and the population of Istanbul is estimated to be 17 million. So we pass from 1 million to 17 million in the context of 75 years, which is a very, very short span. And no cities in Europe have experienced that much of an increase. Okay? And the puzzle starts here. We are down from 6 kids per woman to 1.6 per total fertility. How is it possible to have a 17-fold increase in the population of cities? This is basically due to migration. And the book by Frederick Shorter shows clearly that 2/3 of this population increase can be explained by migration. So migration not only feds fuel to the competitivity of cities, but also migration increases the rate of growth. When the rate of growth increases, the cities gets bigger and bigger, and the demand for the goods produced in the city gets bigger and bigger. So the demographic process of population increase becomes a feds fuel to economic development. So the urban development is, in a sense, integrated to demographic dynamics. Okay, but how we are going to explain the 17-fold, only the cut in population increase within less than a century? This is basically called, due to migration. What happens is that I have said in my presentation that migration is age and sex selective. In the early ages, men migrate, but soon after, men, and the difference is equalized very soon, and then women and men migrate jointly. So what is happening? Suppose that you have two villages far away in the countryside, and you have one woman, okay, and one man migrate to the city. They are 25 years old, the other one is 35. So the woman is in the childbearing age. If they marry in the city, okay, they are going to have 1 or 2 kids, okay? Within a time period of, let's say, 5 years, an intercensal year, the population of the city was 0. Then the migrants came, 2 migrants came, and in the next census, we have 4 people: the mother, the father, and 2 kids. Okay, so this is a process that the demographers call migrants bring their unborn kids together with them. Okay, so what is happening? The birth rates are low, yet births that are supposed to take place elsewhere in the countryside take place now in the city center. So you have a concentration of births in the city, in big cities. The births in the countryside are low, so you don't have so much. And in that case, you have 17-fold increase in the context of declining fertility. So this is a process that links urban growth with the demographic transition. Okay, I think this much is good for the demographic transition. So let me tell you how urban growth takes place. Okay, we have now 2 models that explain the growth of urban economies. One is the conventional urban economic model, and the other one is the, let's say, postmodern or post-structuralist model that explains the urban model. The difference is that in the post-structuralist case, the variables like innovation, creativity enter into the model. In the conventional model, creativity and technology are variables defined as deus ex machina. We don't know where they are coming. We don't have a model that explains, let's say, technological development. And if you think for a while, thinking about trying to explain the technological development is a contradiction in itself, because if we know how innovations are created, then there would be no innovation at all. We don't have a model for the innovation. Okay, so that's why in economics, innovations are taken up as independent variables. Yet, in the 1980s, a very interesting scholar called Thomas Hughes, okay, explained that technologies are not that independent at all. They do develop in certain places and not in other places. Technological development, therefore, is a factor that enhances the international competitive position of cities. Okay, cities like, for instance, regions like California, okay, is very much, I would say, competitive in industries like aerospace, entertainment, filmmaking, music making, and it provides the state of California a GDP. I will tell you that the GDP of California is greater than the GDP of India. Okay, India, because what you have, for instance, we are using Microsoft softwares. Okay, what is the production cost of software? Okay, thousands of persons are waiting for the operating system making, and then it doesn't have a rate, but everybody pays, okay, $50, $150, $200 for having their computer work. So in a sense, the value added in this is incredibly high. Okay, so the creativity, culture industries, innovations become a second factor that adds up to this demographic dynamism. This has, of course, these are the new technologies of the information society. Okay, now what is happening is that we had earlier this type of demographic boosting mechanism to improve the economy of the cities. Now, added to this one, we have information and cultural creativity economies that add up to the development of the society. Let me show you how it is possible to explain urban growth in the conventional way, how it is possible to explain the urban growth in the new contemporary approach. The conventional way explains urban growth in econometric terms. In the field of urban employments or industries are classified into generally two groups. One is called the basic sector that makes the city compete in the worldwide market. Okay, so here, for instance, entertainment is a basic industry in California. Iron and steel making is a basic industry in Turkey's region. Okay, so textiles is a basic industry in Denizli. Okay, so Denizli produces these types of industries. But if you think a while, in English, the term industry is very, very general. What does industry mean? It means that to have an industry economy, you need capital, you need labor, and the labor and capital should interact in a setting to produce what is called sellable goods, goods that can be sold. So actually, what we call industry do not necessarily be industrial production like iron and steel, or say airplanes or whatever it is. You can sell advice, for instance. You can have service industries. So cities that are developed in service industries can also have a competitive edge. So how the And then a city of like Ereğli in Turkey, and in the iron and steel making town, has also employment in the service sector. You have iron and steel workers, but also you have workers working in the service industry, like barbers, bakers, or shoe shiners, so on and so forth. So these are called the non-basic or population servicing industry. So how an urban growth takes place? The urban growth, takes place by the fact that, suppose the city, part of the employment is in the basic sector. The other part are called the non-basic sector. Basic sector generates the export goods, goods that make the distinctive character of urban economy, and the non-basic goods relates to the population of the city. So, for instance, iron and steel workers in Ereğli are basic workers, and the barbers or the shoe shiners are non-basic workers. In Ankara, if you think in Ankara, employment in universities like Hacettepe or Middle East Technical University or Bilkent, they are basic employment because they are not serving the Ankara population alone. The students from throughout the country or internationally get enrolled in the. So Ankara is exporting its education or health services through Hacettepe University. Patients come throughout the world. So here, the export industries can vary from place to place, And then you have shoe shiners or barbers in Ankara. So let me take you, illustrate how urban growth takes place, Suppose an empty place where you create an industrial development. So, for instance, in the middle of nowhere, I start an industry, an iron and steel industry, or a textile industry, a new town. I create, suppose, 1,000 jobs in the textiles industry. The workers start there. Then what happens? As time goes on, they have their families. So suppose that each one of the workers has a family of 4. Then at the beginning, after the factory is established, I will have a population of 4,000, which is called the basic population of the city. So their, let's say, breadwinners or the men are working in the factory and the families are raised in the house. But the population do have a service demand. They will ask for education, they will ask for barbers, they will ask for cinemas, so on and so forth. Suppose that for every 100 person, you need, let's say, 15% in the service industries. Then a population of 4,000 will generate an employment in the service sector. The size of the employment will be multiplied by 15%, will be 600. So you are going to have 600 employees in the service sector. This 600 employees will have their families as well. So 600 will have a population size of 2,400. And this 2,400 will also generate an incremental demand. But as you see, the series converges towards zero. From 2000, if it is 10% or 15%, then we are going to have instead of 300, 300 jobs, something like. And 300 jobs will generate a population of 1,200, okay? And this series converges to zero, and then we reach an equilibrium population for each city. So everything depends on this 1,000 jobs that the city, okay, this is why this is called the basic sector, okay? So the basic sector is the factor that ignites this process, okay? And then we have this population, and if you add up all these increments, you are going to have a city of 10,000, perhaps 12,000, created just because you have one factory. So you start to see why people are struggling very hard to attract international factories in their towns. Like Opel should come or Fiat factory should come to our service. Because once the factory will come, it will generate jobs. The generated jobs will create population. The population will create extra service workers, and the city will start to grow. Okay, and if the city has a very strong, I would say, schools, innovation sector, creative sectors, then the city will have a competitive edge in creativity. It will start to make produce that are not made elsewhere, okay? And in producing this type of products, what happens? People will come to the city to get their things done. So migration, in a sense, will propel, okay? Will propel creativity, and creativity will propel migration. So I think we start to see how this functions, how this migratory flows are related with the population dynamics, which are in turn the gist of the matter for urban development. Okay, I will complete my presentation, 1 hour presentation. I have a lot of things to show you for Turkey, but I don't have time. My time is too limited. I will conclude here. If you think your international migration literature, okay, we have talked with Ahmet Hoca that I concentrate on the concept of labor market segmentation. How labor market segmentation operates in this type of process, okay? Labor market segmentation is first introduced to account for transnational migration, okay? And the labor market segmentation shows or stipulates or indicates that the entries to the labor markets are not as easy as the neoclassical economists think they are. So there are barriers of entry. The barriers of entry to labor markets can be cultural, ethnic, geographical, okay, age-based, sex-based, and so on. So this type of labor market segmentation generates somehow hidden barriers on certain trades. It also generates, okay, hidden barriers for this creativity sector. If you are an Indian, okay, if you have an Indian nationality and you want to migrate to the United States, if you are a layman, okay, you are unlikely to get a visa for United States. But if you have a very, very brilliant PhD in computer science, for instance, okay, then your position as a third world migrant is skipped over. Then you go to the upper echelons of the labor market. So in a sense, the growth dynamics of global cities require migrants that they cannot generate themselves. Okay. For instance, the doctors needed for Istanbul can hardly be educated in Istanbul city alone. So Istanbul requires doctors or university teachers imported from Ankara, from elsewhere. Okay? So as far as the upper echelons of the labor market are concerned, there is a high mobility. Secondly, there are jobs that no one wants to do. Okay, in English they have a nice word for it. Okay, these jobs generate working pool, and they are called jobs. Okay, so the more you work, the poorer you get. Okay, just like the seller in a hamburger outlet. Okay, you cannot have any, I would say, capital accumulation by working in a hamburger outlet. So this is why they are called this type of jobs. Okay, you work 8 hours by the end, there is no prospects for involvement. And thirdly, there are jobs in the job market that lose their prestige. In the first periods, okay, the prestige was high, then the prestige is lost, and it becomes a work job that no one wants to do. For instance, typewriting. Okay, at the beginning, typewriting was a very considered very important skill. Okay, like computer science, and men were used. But in time, this devalued in prestige, and it became a job for women. Okay, so in the secondary labor market. Okay, so as certain jobs increase in prestige, they go up. There are jobs that go, okay, the nursing, looking after the elderly, and so on and so forth. If this is the case, migration in big cities, global cities, will never end. Will never, because big cities will always generate demand for this type of jobs, office cleaning, hamburger selling, or whatever it is. And they will also create jobs for the upper echelons of the labor market. So this is how the international market, international migratory flows are explained in economical terms. There are, of course, other migrations related to political regions, climate regions, ecology. So I'm skipping over. This is a long story. It's another story. But I would like to conclude my presentation here by saying that, so we have seen that the migratory scholarship and urban scholarship developed in the context of industrialization, which was a self-propelling process that generated a social outcome, okay? And in this case, it has generated the basis of international migration. Why in the international migration, this is so important? Because in international global cities like London or New York, you don't have a countryside from which you can get your domestic migrants. You have to find them elsewhere in global south, and they will come to your country, work for it. So this is a process that explains how the international migration is a process that will never end, or highly unlikely to stop in the actual state of the art. If I had time, I would stop here and show you examples from Turkey that the same process are actually unfolding in the landscape of Turkey, generating big cities, and this type of, let's say, onion-shaped age pyramids that are all of them concentrated in big cities like Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, where the population is comparatively young and active, and there in the countryside you have a huge number of elderly people. This has political repercussions. Think that in the elections, local elections of 2019, all the big metropolitan areas did not vote in the same way the countryside has voted. Think of the case of Brexit. The areas where the elderly are concentrated voted differently than big cities. Okay, so it is possible to take this little model and to disaggregate, to make it operational in the national field. So I will end my presentation here.
Thank you very much for this scholarly talk. Probably during this discussion session also you can come to some concrete examples, because you have provided quite great analytical and theoretical framework for us. Now, yes, I'd like to open the floor for questions. Also, we have some people online. Also, they can ask, either they can write or they can join us. I mean, so yes, floor is open, and the first